at the root of it, it's just it's a calmness, it's a clarity, it's a focus, even a competency, and that competency is what breeds confidence and your ability to lead effectively in trying times. Whether it's this deal with the coronavirus, or a child going through a difficult situation at school, or your spouse is going through some sort of medical condition that you're trying to lead her through. I think generally people look to men who are capable, who are strong, bold, assertive, and able to lead with clarity and determination and grit and fortitude during these times. That's what people are looking for, and that's who we have the potential to become.
Man of Mastery, episode 50. Hey, it's a big milestone, and today we got a big guest. I'm super excited about today's guest. It's been a while getting him lined up for this one. But first, I just want to say, with COVID-19 and sequester and everything going on, I hope everybody is safe and healthy and not just neutral. I mean, I really hope people are coming out of this with positive, with a reboot on a number of things. You look at the Earth. There was this picture of somewhere in India where they could see the Himalayas for the first time in like 30 years because the atmosphere was clear, and you see the water clearing up in the channels in Venice almost instantly. So we all need a reboot, and there's so many things we can do to come out of this in better health, more connected. In fact, today's guest talks about his 4 C's that I think are really applicable here to what we can all be aiming to do during COVID lockdown and then take forward and continue past it. So he talks about calibration, he talks about connection, he talks about condition, and about contribution. So he'll break those down, but what a great way to think about what we should be doing right now and how we carry that forward. I also want to, next week, maybe I'll do a short segment on fear and some ideas around how to think about COVID and the unknowns and the situation we're in right now. But if you are in a place where maybe you're in a little bit of a rut because there's not enough structure to the routine you've got right now, or maybe in general, if you're looking for a kickstart, there's some other training I'm doing additionally. You can find out more about that if interested, and if it's something that might be useful to serve you, go out to manofmastery.com/kickstart, manofmastery.com/kickstart. But with that, let's jump into today's episode. This is with Ryan Michler of Order of Man. So Ryan is about 5 years into a journey, a brand, a movement he's created, Order of Man, that it's clearly needed. It's touched on an emotion. It is important. We just talked about connection, right? It's something that's brought 50 to 100,000 men together in ways that are helpful and are healthy. And Ryan is really leading something special. So I hope you enjoy this talk with Ryan Michler as a father, as a leader, as a husband, and as a man. Episode 50, Man of Mastery, with Ryan Michler. All right, guys. Today I have the pleasure and the honor of welcoming to the show Ryan Michler of the Order of Man. His tagline there is "Become the man you are meant to be." I'll save Ryan the long windup of having him listen about himself, but one thing I do want to say, if you don't know who Ryan and Order of Man are, and most of you probably do, today you're going to find out, and you're in for a treat. But I do want to kick off, Ryan, by saying thank you. Ryan has been for me an inspiration, a coach, and a catalyst. And without a bit of the kick in the rear from him, I'd probably still be in the starting blocks, or as an Aussie buddy of mine likes to say, pondering my navel, right? So here I am. I'm coming up on, I think we're going to release this one as the 50th episode of this podcast. I just got my video set up here, rocking finally. Again, a bit of inspiration from Ryan. So this may be my first video episode that goes out as well. So, all good stuff. And I think that's kind of the philosophy behind what Ryan's doing by example and leading a lot of men in is just get on the path, left foot, right foot, and figure it out as you go. So, Ryan, thank you so much for that, and welcome to the show.
Yeah, man. What an introduction. I'm honored. And yeah, I guess honored to be a small part of what you're doing because you put in the work, you put in the effort, and I commend you for what you've done. So just glad to be here and ready to have a conversation today.
Thank you so much. I'm really looking forward to it, and it's so timely. There is, a challenge that the world faces, that this country faces right now, trying times for a lot of people that really require courage, leadership, amongst other attributes, and those are not unique to men. But let's just start off with what do you think is really needed from men right at this point in time?
Yeah, well, there's a lot. I think at the root of it, it's just it's a calmness, it's a clarity, it's a focus, even a competency, and that competency is what breeds confidence and your ability to lead effectively in trying times. Whether it's this deal with the coronavirus, or a child going through a difficult situation at school, or your spouse is going through some sort of medical condition that you're trying to lead her through. I think generally people look to men who are capable, who are strong, bold, assertive, and able to lead with clarity and determination and grit and fortitude during these times. That's what people are looking for, and that's who we have the potential to become.
Absolutely. Well, let's talk about forging some of those things. You had something out recently from Lieutenant Colonel Dave Grossman, who talks about our role of as a man, right? I think you like to ask the question, what is a man, or what does that mean to you? And he had a great answer about protecting our children, about serving something greater than yourself. And in particular, what I took away is he mentioned something about building the skills and the tools that are needed at the moment of truth.
Yeah.
So are there particular things you're working on right now? For example, I know you're a jujitsu guy, right?
Yeah,
Is that kind of
unfortunately, I'm
part?
not doing that now because all of my jujitsu gym is closed down, so I'm not really working on that outside of watching videos, which is good. I guess it's better than nothing, but it doesn't replace being on the ground and rolling with somebody. So yeah, that's a component of it. But there's other facets as well. Making sure that financially we're taken care of and that we're solvent. Making sure that we have the provisions we need, from firearms and ammunition to food storage, to being able to articulate clearly what is happening to my children so that they understand what it's going through, what we're going through as a world and a society and culture, what they are experiencing, being open and receptive to that, being present with them, with my wife, answering questions, and being a rock, really. And again, that comes back to competency and having things in place, but being the pillar, being the beacon, the rock that my wife and children can turn to when they're scared or frustrated or confused, and not allowing those emotions to rule my behavior. Certainly I take emotions into consideration, but I don't want it to rule what it is I'm doing. So that's a very stoic philosophy that I've strived to incorporate, and that served me well. But there's other things. Those are the soft skills. You have the hard skills like firearms training, jujitsu training, being situationally aware. Those types of things come into play and are also important as well.
Yeah, hard skills, soft skills, and just to mention it. So I know you're the father of four, three boys and a girl, if I have that right.
Correct.
My son just recently turned 12, so just the one. But this is an interesting time in figuring out how to structure his life right now, out of school. Dealing with some information that's tough to digest and is confusing for a lot of people, a lot of unknowns, and so yeah, communication absolutely is a big part of that, and figuring out what the messaging is. Um, so I sent you a picture a little bit earlier. Not sure if you got a chance to see it, but it's hanging at a gym that I go to, run by some friends. It says only a warrior can first truly be a pacifist, and everyone else must endure it. So it says it's a samurai philosophy, and in fact, I've heard it said even a little more strongly than that. Not only just endure it, but must suffer it.
Mm.
So, and I think that goes beyond warrior in the sense we think of training jits or krav or something like this. I mean, it's warrior servant to me in the biggest sense of being prepared as a man, as a leader, as a husband, as a father, to take our tribes through good times and bad times, about prep, and then about how you handle it.
Yeah, I do think it's important that all of us espouse some of the warrior virtues and capabilities. Ideally, we don't ever have to use that in a combat life or death type situation, but it's that old adage, it's better to be a warrior in the garden than a gardener in a war. So I like this proverb. Jordan Peterson talks about, uh, what does he say? And I'm paraphrasing here. He says something to the effect of, uh, a good man is not a harmless man. A good man is one who is violent but can restrain himself. Something to that effect. And I think it's the same. It's a similar concept here. You can't be like, weakness is not a virtue, right? And so some people think that, oh well, I'm being civil, right? Maybe you're not being civil. Maybe you're just being weak, or you're being cowardly, or maybe you don't have these capabilities. That is not virtue in and of itself. So it's virtuous to have the capabilities to be able to do harm if needs be, to be able to lead and be effective and be decisive and make difficult decisions, and then fortunately not have to, or be able to control yourself or restrain yourself, or only exhibit those characteristics in a way that's going to actually serve other people, namely your wife, your kids, the people you love and care about, neighbors, etc.
Yeah, absolutely. Are you, I don't recall, do you homeschool?
We do. Yeah, we've been homeschooling for about 9 months, 8, 9 months now since we moved here to Maine. So I
Okay.
say we, it's more accurately my wife does, if I'm being truthful.
No doubt about it. Yeah, I mean, this situation has really made us think a lot about that, and may end up down that path, and we'll see. We'll all see how long this thing lasts. But one of the things we've been doing this week with my son, our son, is having him put a structure to his day. He's got a whiteboard, and he is mapping out. Okay, I'm going to wake up at this time, right? So I've still got a commitment to be up and be ready. I've got this time to read, do math, and then I'm going to train for Spartan, and then I'm going to come back and read and do more math before I train for soccer. And then I'm also can't go to a Krav Maga gym right now, so I'm teaching my son some Krav at home. So I'm keeping myself fresh by teaching him. He's learning some new skills that, as you say, hopefully would never have to use, but be prepared. And I think that gives you more of a calm and confidence to walk through the world and walk through life. Uh,
Well,
what
not only
about the
that, but if you have these skills, you're less likely to have to use them because you realize and understand the stakes. You can keep yourself out of these types of situations. So, developing the skill is ironically enough what keeps you from having to utilize it in a difficult and demanding situation.
Absolutely. I actually took him to a week long Crop for Kids camp a couple years ago, and going into it, I go, "Hey, are you excited? You know, these coaches make it really fun, and you're going to learn some cool stuff." And he goes, "No, Dad, I don't like violence." And I said, "Perfect. That's exactly why you're going to learn how to avoid it if at all possible."
Right. And, martial arts, I guess you could say it is violent in and of itself. That's the nature of it, but it's more than that. It's significantly more than that. It's not as raw and violent and barbaric as those people who aren't familiar with it would think. You can be, and in the right situation, in the right context, it certainly could be that. But there's a lot more behind it, a lot more depth to it than just the violent aspect of it.
Yeah, I agree with that completely. It's not something I studied as a child or was exposed to. I've picked it up just over the last few years as an adult. And it really surprised me how much there is to it that's mental, that's philosophical, that opens doors into new ways of thinking and seeing the world way beyond the physical practice.
Right. Yeah, definitely.
The other thing I like about it for kids is there's just something to the kind of sport where you can physically, literally get knocked down, get your nose bloodied, whether it's boxing, jits, wrestling, uh, that teaches a young person to get back up, get off the mat, literally.
Well, there's that, and the thing that I think is one of the most valuable attributes is that it's one on one. You can't hide behind anybody. You can't get lost in the crowd. You can't run away. You can't perform less than you're capable of. It's you and one other individual who is trying to do the same thing to you that you're trying to do to him. And there is so much value in having to face an enemy, something that you're scared of. And you should be scared. If you're scared about a tournament or a match, that's the right that's the right emotion. There's something to fear here. And then when you step into the fear and you face it and you address it and you come out not unscathed, but you come out alive, you realize, okay, I can do this. I'm capable of doing difficult things. I'm capable of handling it on my own, putting all of the weight of responsibility on my shoulders, and letting the chips fall where they may based on my training and the responsibility and accountability I have to myself.
Absolutely. I'm fascinated by growth through adversity, through post traumatic growth. You know, these things that we're fearful of, that we lean into and go do. And it's so interesting how it just resets perspective
Mm-hmm.
on what you may have thought impossible, that in hindsight becomes just another, kind of milestone in the road.
Right.
So interested if you agree with that. And I guess follow on question to that is what does that look like for you, or look like for your kids in rites of passage, or goals you set these days?
Yeah, for me, I mean, a pretty good indicator for me is if I'm scared of something, I'm a little fearful or anxious about it, then it's a probably good indicator that I should participate in it. We just did a weekend excursion, if you will, about a week and a half ago, 2 weeks ago, where it was exposure to cold water, to cold therapy. We hiked a mountain in our swim shorts and boots, and that was it. And it was snowing at the time. A lot of mindset training, breathing techniques, strategies, things like that. And that was a very powerful weekend for me, and something that I wouldn't say I was afraid of, but I was cautious of, skeptical of to some degree. But it would push me outside of my comfort zone, and there were elements of it that were physically painful. And there's value in that, right? There's so much value in that because you give yourself a reference point for what else you're capable of in life. For my kids, sports is primarily the thing. We get them very involved in competitive sports. We allow them to compete. We allow them to lose. It's important they are familiar with and exposed to failure and loss, and also winning and succeeding. Right? You got to have a healthy dose of both. So we give them opportunities to experience that. My oldest son is very involved with me, specifically in the store with our organization. So he's learning how to handle, messing up an order, or an order not getting somewhere, or having to pay for something where he messed up. Very familiar with that. So that's good exposure. And as far as rites of passage go, we do camping and we do a series of tasks that I can't get completely into, but we have these difficult conversations, and there's challenges that my two oldest sons need to complete on these rites of passages that we do every 2 years. So very, very involved in the process. Not only does it serve them well, but I feel like it serves me as their father and a man as well too.
Yeah, that's amazing. I saw you posted some stuff about on your own, the trip for Wim Hof. I think it was a Wim Hof weekend.
Yeah, that's right.
That looks absolutely incredible.
It is incredible. I was somewhat skeptical of the power of your ability to, generate your own heat, to change your physiological response to stimulus. But it was pretty enlightening and eye opening.
Real deal. That's the real deal.
Oh yeah, I mean, it was a very short exposure to it. Uh, I would have liked to have done it longer, and perhaps maybe I will down the road. But from what I experienced, there was some pretty noticeable uh, abilities to handle yourself physically in those extreme circumstances.
I'm curious, how do you tend to uh, set those kind of goals for yourselves, or events or activities for you personally, Ryan? So, for example, I mean, just one random data point I remember from several years ago for you. You were talking to Joe DeSena of Spartan on one of your podcasts,
Mm-hmm.
and I think you'd completed a beast, or you completed your first trifecta years ago, right? And Joe mentioned something like, "Hey, come out to the farm in Vermont. You're going to do the 60-hour agogi." And you're like, "Bang, I'm in." You didn't even know what you committed to. So do you
No,
do you?
he didn't even say 60-hour agogi. He said, "Come do this agogi event." I said, "Okay, I'll do it." And then after our conversation, I jumped online to see what it was all about. I'm like, "Oh my goodness, what did I commit to?" Then I realized it was 60 hours.
Gotcha. And I love you got some stories, I think, in hindsight on that, about there was a place of doubt where you almost considered dropping out, but then you realized the commitment you had as a leader to your tribe, other people who had showed up. So do you tend to sort of come across those kind of things and you recognize them as something to go challenge yourself with, or do you tend to design several big things into a year for yourself?
I wouldn't say that I design those types of events, but just based on the podcast and my connection with people, I have opportunities that arise, and I try to say yes as often as I can. That's how I go about doing it. If there's an opportunity, it's going to push me outside of my comfort zone. I try to say yes. my natural inclination is to say no. I'm prone to avoid risk. I'm a pretty safe and conservative guy. Like I don't push outside, or rock the boat too much. So I do find that if there's something that would challenge me mentally and physically, that I have to push myself to saying yes, and it's always proved to be good and to serve me well. But I am deliberate about the way that I go about my day. I plan in 12-week segments. I've got an overarching vision for the type of man that I want to be in the roles of father and husband and leader of this movement and organization, leader in my community, and all of the other things that I'm doing. And then I start to work down. I kind of look at it like a pyramid. So you've got this vision of who you are and who you want to be, almost with, you see that image on the dollar bill with the eye on the top of the pyramid, right? Like that's my vision. That's who I want to be. And then it trickles down from there. So I start looking in 12-week segments at certain objectives I want to accomplish in 4 key areas of my life. So myself, my physical, mental, and I should say, I'll say it this way. The way that we've designed this in the framework is calibration, which is yourself, mental, spiritual, emotional health. The second component is connection. So the relationships that you have with other individuals. The third component is condition. That's your physical health, sleep, nutrition, exercise, diet, etc. And then the fourth component that I have is contribution, which is becoming a man of value. How do I add more value? How do I acquire more knowledge and information and then share that as value? That might be in a work environment where I get a new credential or degree and I apply that to my work environment. I secure a new job or a promotion. Maybe it's coaching a sports team, one of my kids' teams for the quarter or for the year, and giving back and serving the boys in the community. Those are the ways that it manifests itself. So I really plan in these 12-week segments, and there's a lot more to it, but we go back and we track it and everything else that has proven to produce results over, the last 5 years of my life is the system I've been using.
I like how you chunk that down. I got to ask just because I'm curious. So I know, I think early on, probably very early on in your Order of Man podcast, you interviewed Mark Divine. I'm surprised that he never twisted your arm into a seal fit crucible.
Yeah, he didn't ask me about it, and I didn't push on the issue. But that is something that is another appealing activity. I've been so immersed in jujitsu lately that's really taken a lot of my time and attention in any spare time. But yeah, these activities are very, very powerful, and they're abundant. Everyone has something like this that you can go participate in, and it's a really good way to push yourself.
Yeah, I totally agree. I did one of those last summer with him and his crew, 12-hour overnight, and I think I'm going to go back for more, either
Oh,
the
yeah.
24-hour or the 50-hour
Awesome.
coming up. But
Yeah.
I mean, it's in so many ways, right? Getting outside that comfort zone physically, not just physically, emotionally, and the teamwork component to it, and
Oh, yeah.
it's the only way to go through one of those things and survive it is as a team.
Yeah, I mean, there's the teamwork, and then I think, I mean, the teamwork is important, but I would think that the number one skill sets you need to have, or thing element that you need to have shored up, is your mindset. If your mind isn't right and you've given yourself an out before you even show up, or you're not exposed to hardship, or you haven't committed fully to completing what it is you say you're going to complete, it's going to get hard. It's going to be painful mentally, emotionally, physically. And in those moments, you'll quit if you give yourself an out. So the mindset to me is the crucial part, because your body can endure way more than you think it can. It's your mind that gives first.
Yeah, no doubt about it. We had a guy. Uh, as soon as you start, you get on a run. I don't know, a couple mile, just an easy jog in before the real beatdown starts and the chaos and the screaming and the hoses in the mud and all that kind of stuff. This guy, he pulled off to the side of the road as we were jogging in. He was going to quit like 5 minutes into this thing that he'd trained for, that he paid for, that had barely started. And the team grabbed him and said, no way, like get back on the road. You're right.
And he was probably in his head. He probably had some expectations of how hard this was going to be, and so his mind was playing tricks on him. Obviously, based on what you're saying, he was capable of running 2 miles. But yeah, he was playing tricks with himself, it sounds like.
Yeah, right. And he finished it, right? And he
Of
finished in
course.
12 hours. So it's
Of course.
your mind has this way of going to make up these end states. Literally, it's a survival mechanism, right? So it makes up some story about how you're going to die because you're doing something that you're afraid of.
Yeah, we have the ability, the tremendous ability, although it doesn't always serve us well, to create what have been dubbed cognitive distortions. So, what we'll do is we'll look at a situation and we'll start making a bunch of assumptions and guesswork as to what will happen. And usually, what the human mind will do is jump to the worst possible scenario. That's a defense mechanism, right? If we jump to the worst case scenario, then we potentially arm ourselves for what could happen. But in modern times, you're not going to have to run away from a dinosaur or a saber-toothed tiger. Like no other tribe is out to kill you. You're probably not going to have to come into a life or death situation. And so usually our situations are, well, you're going to have a bad day, or maybe you're going to get laid off or sued, or all of the, or you're going through rocky patch with your wife. I'm not saying these things are easy. I'm saying they're manageable. You're gonna survive. You're gonna come out okay. If you jump to worst case conclusions and scenarios, you're gonna do things to your mind and to yourself. And I know because I've done this the hard way, that are not conducive to growth and expansion and improvement.
Yeah, totally agree with that. I think of the same thing. Probably not going to have to run away from a tiger or a bear. Although I did see a bear during a Spartan race in Breckenridge a couple years ago. It was
Is
up the
that right?
slope, but probably falls into the category of I don't have to outrun the bear. I only have to outrun the other Spartan
Yeah, you're
racers
fine.
around me, right?
Yeah, and what are the odds that bear's going to attack you versus the 100
Yeah,
people around you, right?
yeah, he wanted
Funny because
nothing.
we did that. Yeah, a black bear, he's going to run away and not do anything. We did when we did that Spartan Agogi. We had a friend there who is deathly afraid of bears, apparently, and uh, and he actually ended up seeing a bear, and it freaked him out. He was running up a hill or doing some kind of work or something, and it freaked him out. And he told us, and it ended up being like a little bear cub, and he was so afraid of it, and we made fun of him. So yeah, I mean, our minds just play tricks on us and make things worse than they really are.
They sure do, and to me, that's one of the great things about going out and doing these kind of crucible things, hard things. And what's hard or what's scary differs for each of us. It's all
It is
relative, right?
relative. Mm-hmm.
But it trains kind of that muscle of being willing to do those things, being willing to grow through those experiences. And I also, I mean, I kind of have this theory, and I want to test this because to me it seems very similar to the concepts you teach the men in your tribe. Is we're not that far removed from cavemen, right? And
I think we are, but mentally, we are not. So our minds revert back to
mentally,
that primal urges and instincts and just the human nature.
right, and that human nature, something very primal to me in men, is that we thrive. We need a tribe of men, and we need the thrill of the hunt. And I believe there are men out there who, if they're not finding some way to get sort of that thrill of the hunt, quote unquote, they're going to act out in other ways. They're going to do it through substance abuse. They're going to do it through, cheating on their significant other, things like that. That sort of, it's not necessarily thrill seeking, but there's something that men need in going out and doing hard things and doing it with other men that we don't necessarily have in modern America.
Yeah, I agree, which is why it's your responsibility to manufacture it. It's funny when we moved to Maine about 9, 10 months ago. We got dubbed as the weird workout people because my wife and I would be outside and we'd run laps in our yard. We have a tire that we'd be flipping or hitting with a sledgehammer. So we were dubbed the weird workout people, and I thought, well, that's a strange thing to like to say about somebody. It's kind of weird. I wasn't offended. I was just like, that's weird. Um, but I get it now because a lot of people here in Maine they're living a different lifestyle than I'm used to. It's a more hardy, rough, rugged lifestyle. They're chopping wood, they're driving truck, blue collar jobs. It's a different lifestyle. And it's funny because these people don't need to manufacture workouts because that's life. Their life is a workout. But most of us sit behind a cubicle or sit in a desk and we're hunched over the keyboard all day and we're in a climate controlled building. And if somebody hurts our feelings, then we get these little safe spaces and timeouts. Like it's easy. Life is easy. So it's so easy, in fact, that people make up dumb things to worry about. And it's funny because a lot of these like big pressing woke social issues since this coronavirus outbreak have seemed to have kind of disappeared and dissipated, that's because we actually have something real to worry about instead of making it up. The point I'm trying to make here is that because our life is so conditioned and so easy, we need to become those weird workout people. We need to intentionally create physical and mental hardship for ourselves so that we can improve, so that we can get better. And if we're not doing it, then we're complacent, we're mediocre, we're falling behind, and then we're ill equipped for real issues like a global pandemic, for example.
I'm super glad to hear that I'm not the only weird workout guy
Yeah,
in the world.
it's an honor, man. It's that to me. I'm like, that's an honor. I'll gladly take that call. I've been called way worse than that.
No doubt about it. So my son plays club soccer, which in a normal schedule he's practicing several times a week. It's big time commitment, right?
Mm-hmm.
They do an hour and a half practice, and what I decided to do is stack some things together. So for the first hour of his soccer workout, I get a workout in. So
Mm-hmm.
I'm the weirdo carrying a sandbag around or wearing a
Yeah,
weight vest
yeah,
or doing a high plank or doing burpees or something. And at first, all these other dads are looking at me like, what is going on here? And then one day, one of them brought his running shoes and he
cool.
started doing laps with me. One
That's
day,
awesome.
a kid, like a little brother of one of the kids practicing, started doing laps with me. Another day, my wife started coming out. One of my son's schoolmates comes out there now, and he doesn't even play soccer, right? He just comes out and works with it. So I think, not only is it on us to manufacture it, it's infectious and it's a
It
good
is.
thing.
Yeah, I did something similar last year when my kids were playing baseball. My oldest son, I would go drop him off at practice, and a couple of the dads would be hanging out and sitting around and talking, which is fine. Like, I don't look down on that. It's fine. You get some social aspect and you're outside. It's a good thing. You're supporting your kid. Nothing wrong with that. But I would take the opportunity to run on the warning track of the baseball field, and I would just run from pole to pole, just back and forth. And I swear I must have done 50 or 60 laps by the time practice was over. And I do things like that when they were playing football. Really nice field that they were playing on, AstroTurf, nice field, beautiful rubber track. I go out there and run laps, and even at jujitsu, when the kids are rolling and doing jujitsu, a lot of parents are there, and again, that's fine. They're there supporting their kids, but they've got a bench and some weights right there, and a pull-up bar and a punching bag, and so I'm over in the corner, doing my thing. Like this, these are opportunities to stack tasks, which is important because we only have a limited amount of time, and we got to make the most of it. When we have it, you got to take it.
You got to take it, and really no excuses, right? Some people go, oh well, I can't run a Spartan race, I can't do jujitsu. I'm gonna do it after I get in shape. Like you just gotta
Yeah,
start. You just gotta start doing it, right? And
yeah,
and even if sitting at a desk too long, if I spun the camera around here in my home office, got a couple, I got a rowing machine, I got an elliptical, got the pull up bar.
yeah.
Even if it's just like stand up and do 3 pull ups between
Right.
meetings, it's something, right?
Right, and I leave my Sornex kettlebells right here. They're just right here on the floor, and so I'll get up and I'll do some either kettlebell swings or, I'll put them on my shoulder and do some squats, or I'll do push-ups on them so I can go further than parallel. Like I do a lot of different stuff just with the little hunk of metal that I have right here. Like there's so much that you can do if you're just a little bit intentional about it.
A little bit of movement, even for 30 seconds, right? And the stuff starts to compound. So maybe let's talk about compounding success and results. And let's talk about schedule too, right? Because we're kind of talking about stacking. Um, for you and for your family, um, morning ritual, evening ritual is something I like to ask a lot of people about. Do you have one that you subscribe to that you really stick to? And has it changed at all now with the kind of the lockdown?
Our life hasn't really changed with this lockdown thing, like because it's been this way for the last year. Like I work at home. Well, it's been this way for longer. I work at home. My wife stays at home. Our kids are homeschooled. So like none of this is actually foreign to us, which is kind of interesting. People are like, "Oh, how's it been?" I'm like, "It's been pretty like status quo. Like not a whole lot has changed." We're
Other than
fortunate that
baseball, jits,
right, some of these things
sports.
we can't, yeah, we can't get involved in the sports and the social aspect. But as far as a family dynamic, it's been pretty manageable. Yeah, so morning routine is I'll wake up, get some water in me. I'll do some exercising. Some when I was training jujitsu, I'd train 3 days a week in the morning and then two in the evenings. So I'd go do that. And then the days I wasn't, I would just work out here. I've got a rower. We've got the pull-up bars. We've got a squat rack. I brought everything inside where it's so cold because it's normally in our garage. So brought everything inside, and we do it here. A lot of body weight movements. We've got mats in our house, so me and my kids wrestle and things like that. So I'll do my workout in the morning. Then we'll have breakfast. Try to have breakfast together to the degree that we can. We usually do a family meeting, which is an opportunity for us to all get on the same page. And this doesn't apply as much now, but where are the kids going? What practices? What activities? Who needs to take who where? When do they need to pick them up? What are we having for dinner? These types of things. And then we go about our day. And then the very first thing I do is I actually get this planner out and I go through and I plan out my day and document and write down everything that I need to accomplish. Look at what I didn't accomplish from the day before, roll that over, make sure that I'm tracking my stats and the things I want to accomplish. That's pretty much my morning, and then I get to it. Evening is the very first thing I'll do before I wind down with work. Is I'll pull this back out and I'll recap it. What did I get done? What didn't I get done? And then we'll do dinner. So we have dinner as a family. 99% of the nights, dinner as a family. It's very important to us. We ask the kids about their day, what they liked most, what they liked least. And then when we're done, we'll usually do some jujitsu, or we'll work on a puzzle together, or play a game. It's usually family time. Put the kids down about 7:30, 8 o'clock, and then my wife, half of the time we'll go and do our own thing. She's growing her seeds right now. Maybe I have a project or a podcast I'm trying to release, so we'll take an hour or whatever, and then we'll come back together. We'll read books or watch a show or work on a puzzle together. But that's pretty much the system.
Nice. Do you have a hard? Do you use a strict calendar or have a hard stop for work? Working from home has the
Yeah.
tendency to try to creep into your life.
I actually allow it to creep in because I like it, so during the day, this morning, for example, I had a podcast, let's see, well, at 11:30, but I didn't have anything scheduled. I had things I needed to do. So I came in, got some work done about 8:30, 9 o'clock, spent about an hour, maybe an hour and a half doing that. And then all my kids were outside with my wife playing in the snow because we got about 8 to 9 inches of snow last night. And so I went out there with them and watched them. I was shoveling snow on the porch while they were playing, but I was outside with them doing the thing. So I allow some of that little creep to come in, because it's important to me. As far as stopping, yeah, I stop at night about 5:30 or 6 o'clock every. Yeah, so I do. I have that hard stop at 5:30 or 6, and then that's usually how it works. Not always. I mean, last night, and this is a very rare exception, but last night I had the opportunity to interview a doctor, a physician, and a scientist who's working on a vaccine for coronavirus.
Apologies. I know you've struggled a little bit with internet in the past, so it must be on me
Yeah,
this time.
I've done that, man. Fortunately, knock on wood, I really have.
Adapt and overcome. This is what we're talking about. Life will throw you curveballs.
Yep.
Appreciate your patience. So you were just saying a hard stop, and you had an opportunity to interview a doc last night working on COVID.
Yeah, so yeah, I had an opportunity last night to work or have a conversation with a scientist and a physician who's working on a vaccine for coronavirus. So I did that. It was like 7:30, 8 o'clock. But those are few and far between. But 99% of the time, I stop at 5:30 or 6, and that's the boundary that I've set up, and that works for my family dynamic.
Yeah, thanks for that idea. I mean, there's all I find there's always more work, and especially with the dynamic we got right now with the kind of lockdown. I'm trying to figure that one out and really figure out what it looks like.
Yeah,
So
boundaries are important. Routines are important. If you don't have that, it's just you're not going to be as effective with what you're trying to do. So, yeah, creating that routine is important for you and your kids too. They need that routine and that discipline and structure.
they do, absolutely. And then we were talking about stacking things, and I mentioned sort of compound interest, compound results. Uh, so whether it's the I can't lift this, I can't run a Spartan, I can't train jits, whatever that mindset might be. There's just this. How would I describe it? I think people look at things like success or accomplishments as a point in time event rather than realizing it's a process. I think Willie Nelson said something along the lines of, it was amazing this hit song or whatever, but after 10 years of playing behind chicken wire in podunk bars or whatever, people don't have the perspective or the opportunity to transparency sometimes to see all the work that goes into something. So you, for example, Order Man has been wildly successful, and it's been on a huge kind of upswing from the very beginning, right? But not everything's success. Not everything succeeds. I know you've had issues with business in the past. You've had, kind of the first trial of getting an event going and figuring that thing out. So can you talk a little bit about how it's not a straight line path. It's a jagged path.
I mean, it is. You're going to have ups and downs, and hopefully, when you pan back out and you look at the whole of the situation you're in, that it looks like it's an upward trajectory. But if you zoom in on one specific moment, you're going to see a lot of variable. We call it standard deviation in the financial world, right? You're going to see a lot of deviation from that average growth that hopefully you're experiencing over a long period of time. It could be high, it could be low, but it's never linear, right? So yeah, we've had a lot of ups and downs, and I've learned a lot of lessons. And fortunately, I've had the mindset to always take them as lessons when we do fall behind or we do fall short. The first event that we did here in Maine, in fact, which is probably our seventh or eighth event, we lost. We lost money on the event. Uh, and obviously we're not in the business of losing money, but it is what it is. It worked out that way. Now, granted, a lot of the reason that we lost on the event was because I put a lot of money and investment into getting our barn and homestead situated where we could host 100 people here at a time. So that won't always be the case, but those are learning moments and learning opportunities, and they're a valuable part of the process. But you got to be very careful if you're looking at other people's successes and you're discounting what it took to get there. Like if you're discounting, for example, somebody's ability to communicate, and you're listening to a podcast and you want to start your own podcast, and you think, well, the only reason he's good at a podcast is because he's a great communicator, or he's well connected, or he's wealthy, or he's whatever, fill in the blank. Then you're really excusing yourself, because what you're also simultaneously saying is that the only reason that person has what they have is because of a series of fortunate events outside of their control. So now you're suggesting, even subconsciously, that the only reason you're not ahead is because your series of fortunate events hasn't taken place yet. So you don't you get to absolve yourself of all of the work that this individual did, and you just wait for your ship to come in. And then you wonder in 10, 15, 20 years why you're not experiencing results. It's because you spent so much time discounting what other people were doing, and you excused the work required to have what that individual has.
Right.
So
Yeah.
honor. So I say honor people who have achieved success. Honor them by acknowledging the hard work that they've done and the challenges they've overcome to get there. When I see somebody who's successful, I take Joe Rogan for example. If you're to look at the pinnacle of podcasting, that would probably be on a short list of the best on anyone's list, objectively anyone's list. And it would be easy to say, well, it's because he was a comedian before, and because he did Fear Factor, and because of this and because of that. That stuff wasn't easy either. Like he built that stuff as well. So I actually honor the work that he's put in, the effort that he's put in, and that's something I celebrate to the degree that I can. And then I recognize that that's the same amount of effort and work I need to put in order to have the same and similar types of results that he's experienced.
It's about the hard work and the action as opposed to the excuses and waiting for,
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if it's entitlement or whatever it is. I've got, yeah, a quick story that's very, very similar. I've got a buddy who started a business in San Diego, a brewery, and they've done very, very well. He's got a unique product and niche, and they'll probably transact someday for hopefully a huge multiple, and great for him and his business partners and his family. But what people don't see is that when he started that business, he cashed out everything he had and put his entire life savings in it, moved out of his house into his own garage, rented the house out. His wife was pregnant, so he's living in the garage with like mice and a pregnant wife. And then his initial prototype beverage, he couldn't replicate the recipe
Mm.
after they'd made the commitment. So failure after failure for days on end, for months, until he finally got it right. Right, he put in the hard work, he put in the reps, and it's not about kind of that end. It's about the journey along the way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, great example of that. Most people will never see the rats. They'll never experience his wife being upset with him because she's sleeping on a couch while she's pregnant. They'll never see it. All they'll see is the result that he produced when he becomes has some notoriety for it, and they'll discount and excuse everything else that happened leading up to it.
Yeah, no doubt. So what's kind of the next level for you? You know, people look at Ryan Michler, very successful order man so far. These events that you've started, they're selling out almost without, I think, any publicity or marketing. Um, you've got Iron Council, I think, has grown quite significantly.
Yeah.
What's kind of next level for you?
Right now, we're just continuing to grow and expand our offerings. We're working on an initiative inside of our Iron Council to track and honor those men who are engaged in activities and achievements that they can unlock and advancements within the Iron Council. So that's something that's got a lot of my attention right now. Next year, prior to everything that's been happening with the coronavirus, we've had an idea to run a very large event. I'm talking 1,000+ men at an event, bringing in some tremendous, high quality, top notch speakers to speak at this event and to share their experiences and thoughts and really put together a phenomenal conference for men. And those are the two right now, other than, just continuing to double down on the work we're doing, the efficiency and the effectiveness of it, how we're reaching more people. A lot of the same and some minor adjustments and experimentation along the way. But yeah, we've got a long ways to go, and we're on the path. It's exciting stuff.
I'm excited, man. That large event sounds amazing. I look forward to hearing more about that. Um, so, you know, as we start to wind down, let's talk about different ways and places people can find you. But I do have a question. So, one of those places is a Facebook group that's grown quite large and that you've run successfully for quite a while. And I just wanted to ask because this happened a little while ago. It kind of relates back to, do the work, right? Kind of suck it up sometimes and do the hard stuff. When uh, I'm not a Facebook guy. Like I am not naturally inclined to social media. It's part of I think what we do as a necessity. But personally, I think I enjoyed your podcast long before I just kind of clicked the button and got into Facebook, right? And what I saw in the Facebook group over time, I perceived to be a lot of whining and not a lot of doing. And I think you kind of put your foot down with a little bit of tough love a while ago and said, "All right, this is on me, but we're going to correct course here."
Mm-hmm.
Has that happened, or have you decided what you're going to do with the group? Is that going to continue?
As of right now, it's going to continue. We were able to course correct and change a lot of the trajectory and direction of it. And this is something after running that Facebook group for 4 years now that is typical, right? It's standard. This happens. You veer off course or you pay less attention to one thing because you're giving your attention to something else, and then that thing that you weren't paying attention to starts to cry and is the squeaky wheel, and then it needs your attention. And this is the way of business and life. But we created and built a standard operating procedure that all of my moderators now know and have read and know exactly what is expected of them. We brought in new moderators to help because we had grown so large that with our current moderator team, it just wasn't enough people. We assigned some assignments and roles and responsibilities, and then we're quick to remove people from the group. I hate to do that because we want men. The whole goal is to help as many men as possible with the tools and the resources they need. So you hate to eliminate somebody, but I don't feel like I'm supposed to be the savior of everybody and help every single man out there. Some guys just aren't interested. And if that's the case, that's fine. I wish them the best, but they're not going to be destructive in our group. They're not going to jeopardize what it is that we've worked so hard to create. So I'm very comfortable removing people quick without asking a whole lot of questions or giving a whole lot of warnings. And I've instructed our moderator team to do the same thing. And it seemed to have cleared a lot of this whining and complaining up and been more focused on goals and solutions and activities and driving forward like men, not like little boys.
Right, exactly. No, I'm glad you said that. Thanks for being straightforward about it. And that's one of the amazing things I think for people who get to know you and get to know your content is ownership and accountability. You know, you seem like the guy that's always willing to raise his hand and say, "Look, I don't know if I'm part of the problem, but I'm going to help be part of the solution here."
Sure.
And where there are course corrections that need to be made, you go like, "Okay, we need to correct course here. Let's just do it."
I mean, what's the alternative? Not acknowledging it, not addressing it, putting it off on somebody else, and then it just keeps going in the same direction. I don't want to go to that direction. I want to go this direction. And whether it's my fault or not, if I want to change directions or I want something to happen or I want to affect the outcome of something, it doesn't have to be my fault. But if I want to enact that change, then it has to be my responsibility. And that's the way that I've lived my life over the past 5 years mostly. And we've produced some amazing and incredible results for ourselves. I say ourselves, my family mostly is what I'm talking about, but also within the order of man and people who listen and are inspired by what we do. It's a powerful responsibility. It's a heavy burden, but it's a burden that I'm willing to bear because it's the battle, like you were talking about earlier. It's that adventure. John Eldridge talks about it in his book. One of my favorite quotes. He says, "Deep in his heart, every man longs for a battle to fight, an adventure to live, and a beauty to rescue." And I found that to be true, and I've tried to step into that phrase as often and frequently as I possibly can, and it served me well.
Well, you are absolutely clearly the right guy for the job. You know, you've helped touch and inspired a ton of men, and I think your last point brings us right back to where we started on courage and leadership. So we're all facing uncertain times right now. If we want to wrap it up, maybe with what would you leave men with and people in general, a thought on what to do next in the very uncertain future we've got with COVID and that pandemic. What are some things we can do proactively that we can control or that we can do to come out of this with huge positives and new opportunities?
Yeah, it's a very unprecedented time, but it also represents a tremendous opportunity for those who are willing to acknowledge that there will be opportunities and then to step into those opportunities. It's not enough to acknowledge it. Like you have to accept it, embrace it, and then work towards it. If you don't mind, I'm going to share a post that I had made on Instagram just
Please.
maybe a half an hour before we jumped on this call.
Absolutely.
And here it is. These are trying times. Excuse me. These trying times are going to devastate a lot of people. They're also going to create some incredible opportunities for others. Which camp you fall into is largely determined by you. And then I come up with some recommendations on what people can do. So wake up early, move your body, lift heavy things, read a bunch of books, eat clean, look for problems, solve the problems, help a family member, serve a neighbor, learn a new skill, pick up a new hobby, connect with a lost relationship, work with your hands, donate to charity, build a project, build a product, make connections, share connections, add value, be a man. So the individuals who take this list and add to this list and work hard on incorporating these things in their life will be much better served, and they'll come out of this thing not without scars, but better and stronger and more capable because of it.
I love that, and it's all action oriented. Again,
Always.
in a crisis, there's a risk of just getting glued to the endless news cycle and the uncertainty. But what you just read, thank you for sharing that. It's all about kind of surveying the scene and just getting on the path and taking action and doing positive things. So I really appreciate that. And why don't we wrap it up with where people can best hear more of that from you and find you and Order a Man?
Yeah, Instagram's a great place. Facebook and Twitter, all at Ryan Michler. My last name is spelled Michler. We're on YouTube and wherever you listen to podcasts as well. So if you want to listen to the podcast or watch the podcast, then just search Order of Man, just like it shows on the hat right
There
here.
you
Order
go.
of Man, and you'll find us.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much. I'm really looking forward to events getting back on the schedule when life gets back to normal.
Me too.
I'll tune in for that, and I want to. I don't want to say I want to. I am going to register for one of those and join you in person one of these days soon. But I super appreciate your time, and thanks for jumping on, and thanks for bearing with me through Wi-Fi issues here. Enjoyed it. Thank you so
It's
much
good
for
that it's
sharing.
somebody else's turn to have Wi-Fi issues
Yeah.
too. I'm just enjoying the moment, looking at what I must have looked like when my internet was on the fritz as well.
My frozen face on your screen. Absolutely. But thank you so much for your time, and thank you for what you do, Ryan.
Thanks, brother. Appreciate the opportunity.
Okay, that was episode 50 of Man of Mastery podcast. And thank you again to Ryan Michler for that one. Super excited to have brought him to you. And thank you for all of you guys, Ryan and you included, for bearing with me through some stuff on that one. Like I said, adapt and overcome. I had internet issues. It's the first time I shot video for any episode. And for the most part, other than a quick cameo from me somewhere there in the middle trying to fix issues, adapt and overcome. As I said, I just recorded one side of the video, just Ryan. But hey, he's the important one on this one. You got a good experience with Ryan. The audio levels are all over the place. Hopefully I fixed those to a level that you could enjoy this. There was just some important stuff from Ryan. So hopefully you got everything you could out of it in what's needed from men right now as fathers, leaders, husbands, now and out into the future. You can find show notes for this one, links to Ryan, Order of Man, his book Sovereignty, and Iron Council at manofmastery.com/050. And you'll also find links there to the video version of this out on YouTube if you want to check that one out. All right, coming up next week, I think I'm going to do a solo cast on fear, just to help people through what we're all going through right now. And then I'm excited about what's to come here in year 2. So stay tuned in. As always, I welcome your feedback, your reactions, your suggestions, guest and topical ideas. Keep them coming. Thank you for listening. I really do appreciate you guys, and have another great week.